Hello everyone, I'm Radha Mishra, Professor and Head, Department of Communication Media for Children at the SNDT Women's University, Pune. Today we will be looking at Paper 9, Mass Media and Development, and module on Sources in Media, Checking for Truth and Reliability. Often we find that the people whom we are looking up to on television, whether they are celebrities, actors, sports people, politicians, they tell us things. Do you think all that everybody says in the media is the truth? How do we understand or come to know what is really accurate, what is the truth, and what where someone is not really completely telling us the correct thing? Very often nowadays we get forwards in form of emails, WhatsApp. On social media there are articles, blogs, where different kinds of messages are being told to us, things that we are reading which are widely different in what they are saying. They are different in the facts, difference in opinion. How do we know? How, as a consumer of so much media, can we make out what to believe and what not to believe? Today we will try and determine some answers to those questions of what is truth, what is accurate, and how do we know that it is right and not false. Also, all of us know today anyone can write anything on the internet, in a book, and just because something comes to us in the print does not make it accurate and factual. Just because you hear something on radio or television does not make it true. Just because something was stated very persuasively or convincingly by your favorite politician, actor, singer, author, or even your best friend does not make it a fact. It is important to be able to evaluate the sources of information and the references that you can use and how to use, so that you can understand or you can use them for your research purposes, for classroom discussions, or even in an exchange of ideas with a colleague or a friend. Information that you're using is based on what you read and to what extent you can determine that what you have read is correct. It also depends on who you are voting for and whose information you are receiving. So let's begin by understanding a very fundamental fact about media. Everybody has an agenda. Never forget that. There are very many reasons why people make the statements they do. Very many reasons why people say what they do. But remember, people say and do things because they have an agenda. We would like to believe that the media that we are receiving is objective, is factual, is telling us the truth. However, from the very beginning of media, from the beginning of newspapers and magazines and other written material, it is evident that the writer of those periodicals, of those magazines, those newspapers have an agenda, and that they are promoting that agenda through their writings. There are newspapers, magazines, television, radio networks, and even authors who are considered conservative or liberal, depending upon their position on the issue that they are writing about or reporting about. If you are aware of what is referred to as a slant of the reporter's own position on any subject or the slant of his or her media house, then you know that what you will be reading or hearing on that newspaper or on that television show is going to be having some sort of bias. So knowing the slants, the biases of media institutions help us determine what is truth, what is factual, and to what extent do we believe it. Since every reporter and every media outlet of every kind has a slant, liberal, moderate, or conservative, in favor or not in favor of, it is a good idea to read, listen to many different stories or reports on the same issue, and that will help you determine the crux, the core, the truth or in any story. There are some sources that are considered credible and some sources which are considered not so credible. Some of the information sources that are more credible than others are people who have been in the business for a very long time. They have established a strong reputation for accuracy and dependable facts. In general, universities and government agencies have a great deal of credibility. Information presented as facts by these institutions carries a lot of weight. Research and studies done by these entities or research that is commissioned by them is usually given more credibility than when done at a personal level or by a private institution. Presumably, the idea is that these sources are more credible and that they do not have vested interest in the outcome, where private industry or private organization may have some interest. Even when we look at researches, we need to know how that research was done, what methodology was used, what was the sample, and how the experiment or the research was conducted. There are correct ways to do research and there are sloppy ways. So when quoting any research study, ensure that you have understood where and how that research was conducted and what clearly were the objectives of that research. One will wonder, why would somebody give wrong information? Why would somebody tell us not anything but the truth? The entire purpose of some of the sources of information is to mislead. There are many sources of information whose purpose is to mislead and misinform. Their main purpose is to persuade you to believe in their way of thinking just because they believe that they are right and everyone else is wrong. Sometimes they stand to gain financially or to obtain power if they can persuade enough people to see things their way. And sometimes they simply believe that their way of thinking or what they want is the best and the only way and the only right way. So one needs to be careful and remember, not everybody who is giving us information has our best interests at heart. There are many examples of intolerant people who do whatever it takes, including making up what they present as facts, to persuade people to their way of thinking, whether it is in regard to religion, politics, or something else. If you do not know how to verify whether their information is fact or opinion or downright fiction, you are more likely to fall prey to misinformation. It is important to realize that everyone has an agenda and everyone has a reason for wanting you to agree with them on whatever subject they are discussing or promoting. If it is advertiser, their agenda is pretty obvious. They want you to buy their products or use their services. If it is a politician, they want you to support them and their political party. So, remember, do not be fooled. Always verify the accuracy of your information. In every case, you should verify that information that somebody is giving you, whether it is accurate and factual. In every case, you need to determine what is fact and what is opinion. Sometimes information presented will be extremely incorrect and misleading, especially where politics or advertising is concerned. Some of the worst misinformation is spread virally through email forwards and through WhatsApp. For some reason, people tend to accept whatever they receive in these emails, and without any questions, without wondering where the information comes from, they further forward that information to other people. And even if there is not a single word of accuracy in them, most often there isn't any. Many of you will remember when the new 2000 rupee note came. It was circulated to say that it had microchips and all kinds of fancy things embedded. How many of us believed in that? Why did we believe that? We need to think and look at information in terms of who is sending us, why is it being sent, and understand the implications of us forwarding such insidious messages even further. Nowadays, with internet and the mobile, and very good search engines are available. It will take you only a few seconds to Google and find out the origins of different organizations, different websites or blogs, and understand who the people are and what their biases potentially can be. So we start by looking at the difference between fact and opinion. Do not assume either. It is important to know the difference between a fact and opinion. And if you're not sure, it will take you only a few minutes, few seconds to verify whether or not a statement is a fact. Opinions cannot be verified, but facts can be verified. Research the person who is making the statement, learn who he or she is, what their agenda have been previously. Does any respected source list them as a credible authority or expert on the subject they are commenting or promoting? Repeating things that you have heard others say that some of us may know through our knowledge or research is often mistaken or misguided, and it takes a lot of credibility away from you. Never imagine that a lot of people saying or believing the same thing means that it is accurate or correct. So just because lots of people are telling you the same thing doesn't mean that it is correct information. Verify for accuracy. There are many factors that make a source credible. Whenever you're looking at a source on the internet, you should check several things to verify that the information is credible. These things include source's authority, accuracy, objectivity, currency, and coverage. So how do we check on authority? Authority is important in determining credibility of the website because it establishes who is in charge of the site, who wrote the information covered there, and more. it is important to look at the background information of an author so you can understand whether the author has potential biases which might lie, or ask the question, how does the author know this information? When we talk of the author, it may refer to the individual, a company, or an institution. Here are some questions written by Susan A. Gardner, Benham, and Neville in their 1999 article. Oh, what a tangled web we have woven! Helping students evaluate sources. It was published in an English journal, and this should answer some of our questions when determining authority of a source. The first thing we look for is to see if the author's name is listed. Why is this important? If you know who the author is, then you can easily look up and see what else that person has written. What kind of authority does that person have on the subject or the topic he or she has written about? If you're reading an article on health, and if it has been written by a doctor, you know that the source is credible, that the person who is talking knows something about the field. But if that same person starts talking about economics, then the question may arise, how much or to what extent is this person an expert in economics or finance? So it's important to determine the field of expertise of the author, and this we can do only by knowing who the author is. If any article or any piece of writing is anonymous, then there is a good chance that this piece of information is not verifiable or that it is not correct or factual. Once we know the name of the author, we also need to see their credentials. Do these identify the author as an authority in the field? Credentials or title such as professor, doctor, specialist, or a degree such as an MA, MS, PhD, etc. show that the author is recognized as an authority in the field, either through education or by the job title or by job experience. Is the author or does the author have any institutional affiliation which has been listed and linked to that person's homepage or on that institution? Why do we need this? Normally, institutional affiliation means what the school, business, department, professional organization the author belongs to. If the author belongs to one or any of them, there should be a link to the said institutions. This helps determine the credibility, because an author who is a recognized member of a respected institution has been vetted by that organization as an authority on a particular subject. So look for institutional affiliations of the author. Which university does he belong to? What is the kind of university? Is the university reputable? All these questions can help us understand the source. Is the relationship between the institution and the author clear? If there is a link to institution but no explanation is made as to the connection the author and the institution share, then you may have to look further around both these sites to see how the author is affiliated with that organization. If you cannot find this information, the author may be lying or misrepresenting their affiliation with the institution, which would make them a little less credible. So if you were, say, to search for me as a professor in SNDT Women's University, you could look up my page and see if there is a link to the university. You could look into the university website and see whether I'm really a professor here or not. If you don't find that link, then obviously there is some doubt on the person's credibility. Does the author list an address, whether it is email or postal? Or is there a phone number for contact? Are there other contact details shared? Nowadays, there are lots of websites which tell you or give us no idea as to who is operating that website, where it is located, whether physically or in the virtual world, which raises questions about their credibility. Authors who are authorities in their subjects should welcome inquiries from others. If the author includes no way to contact them, the site may not be as reliable, as there is no easy way to ask the author questions about the source of information. So look for the author's contacts. Is there a link to author's biographical information? It is important to know as much information as possible about the author to see if they are knowledgeable in the field. Say, for example, if the author is writing a book on biomedical engineering and his biography states that he is a MA in English literature, is he then a reliable source for someone who holds a PhD in biomedical engineering? Obviously, the answer is no. So look at the credentials again. Most of this information can be found in About Us or Contact Us link on any web page. If your source is an article in newspaper, online magazine, blog, information about the article's author can be found either at the beginning or the end of the article, while information on the newspaper, magazine can be found in About Us or Contact Us link on the web page. The second issue that we look at is how do we determine accuracy? Here are some questions that we can again ask, or here are some things that we can look to estimate accuracy. First question that we look at, is the information reliable and free of errors? Information that is full of spelling errors, grammatical errors, or other proofreading errors comes across as unprofessional and unpolished, and therefore relatively unreliable. While one or two small typos are generally forgiven and acceptable, sites that have number of errors, punctuation problems, are thought to be written or can be considered as written by unprofessionals or by people who don't have any links to professional organizations. Additionally, the information itself should be correct and not faulty or wrong. If you're not sure if the information is correct, one can always search for information and see what others have to say. If the vast majority agree, then it is likely that the information is correct. Another way we can check for accuracy is through bibliography or bibliographical information that has been shared. If a site cites other sources or a bibliography work or reference page, if that has been included, then one can verify the information used on the site. Is it clear who is responsible for accuracy of this material? Does the author say who looked over the information, especially if author is citing other sources? If there is no claim made to accuracy of the material presented, how can you know if the information is correct? Are there links to other reliable sources? If the site links you to other places to go for information, then the author is being responsible. Are there links to other reliable sources? If the author or the website provides with links to other places, other sources of information, then the website or the author is being responsible and in telling you that they are not the only source. So trust, or one can to some extent trust, websites, authors who also provide links to other sources which will give us the same information. It is important to get different sources of information so that you can see if there is any discrepancy or errors. If you find any, you will have to reconcile these differences by doing more research or contacting the authors to ask them where their material came from. If statistical material is included, then are the sources for these material clearly stated? Statistics can be easily manipulated to show the outcome the author desires, and therefore are not always reliable unless the author states how many people were surveyed, what questions were asked, how the results were interpreted, and why the sampled survey is a fair and honest representation of the population the survey says it is supporting. If the author does not tell you this information, then he or she should include a link to the site where the survey information came from. If there is no link, or if the site where the survey came from does not provide this information, then you should treat this statistical information as suspect. Then we look at the issue of coverage. Is the scope of the topic clearly stated? A reliable, credible source is going to be more reliable and credible if it handles a manageable aspect of the topic rather than trying to cover the entire topic. It is far easier to compile good information about a smaller aspect of a topic than it is to try and get good information about all aspects of the topic. Say, for example, a site covers every single aspect of every single one of Shakespeare's works. Would they not likely to be as reliable as one that focuses solely on Hamlet? Simply because of the sheer amount of information that would be required to give us an accurate and reliable picture of each aspect of each of those works. Whereas focusing on one specific work would make it easier to find and compile good information about that one work. Are the supporting materials like bibliography, charts, statistics, graphs given? As we talked about a little earlier, if a site does not list its references or does not give any supporting material like charts or graphics, then the site may not have credible information. Are there links to other resources on the topic? Again, as discussed earlier, if a site provides link to other sites on the topic, it demonstrates that the author's knowledge of the topic and willingness to show and consider opinion and view of others other than his own. Is the site still under construction? If a site is still under construction, then the site may not give you an accurate or a complete portrayal of what the author intends to say. If the site has not been updated in a long while, it is likely that the information is also outdated and may no longer be accurate. Then we look at currency. Is the date of latest revision on the site clearly stated? Look at the web page to find out current copyright, last revised date. Usually this information is at the bottom of the page and should be clearly labeled. If there is no last revised date or copyright year given, then the information may not be current. In a world where information changes quickly, it is best to use the most recent information as possible. Is the date given for when the information was gathered? If the information was gathered several years ago, it may no longer be accurate. From what year are the sources or the author's references that are being cited? If they are old sources, then once again the information may no longer be valid. Is the web page or the website being kept current? If it is not, then the author may not be a reliable authority on the subject, as he does not care enough to do research to keep the information current. Are the links current? Do the links really work? This will further tell you whether the website is keeping its information current and accurate. Is this truly the latest information on the subject? It is always best to use the most current information on any topic so that you avoid giving old information that may have been proved wrong by new research. So whether it is research which was conducted 15 years ago may not be valid today. So looking for sources, you need to look at when was the research conducted, when was the information provided, and at what time period is that information talking about. Objectivity. We all like that our information, our media, our newspapers give us objective information. We expect no less from other people whom we are interacting or when we are searching for information. It is important for an author or for a credible source to present their arguments with least amount of prejudice or bias towards his opinion or any other opinion. While it is fine for an author to disagree with a particular viewpoint, he must do so politely or risk alienating the audience. Nobody likes somebody telling us what to think or what to hear. Authors who do not include any dissenting opinion also run the risk of being unreliable because they are not presenting both sides of the story, which can lead to accusations of being unreliable and not credible. Since the person or the author is not fairly representing the entire situation. Is the site factual or does the author try to change the user's mind? Like we said earlier, everybody has an agenda. So one needs to be aware of persuasive sites that only present one point of view, or the ones that actively try to convince you that information there is the only correct information. Remember the either or false dilemma dichotomy fallacy, which states that the idea that there are only two solutions to any given problem, and one of the correct solutions is what they are saying, and the other is wrong. If the author uses fallacies in making his case, then that information is unreliable. Are the graphics or imagery used to sway the opinion of the user? What kind of images, graphics, pictures is the author using to manipulate your emotions and make you believe in a certain way? Visual imagery is a very powerful tool and it manipulates, and you should be aware of how responsibly an author uses imagery to illustrate his or her point. Thank you.